Believe it or not, there's a title to this talk, and the title was "Will D&D Save Hasbro?"
Okay. So can they? Do you think that D&D and Magic can save Hasbro in the end?
Well, I know what I've been thinking, so why don't we see what you two think, and then I'll
Okay.
I'll give my opinion because I've been thinking about it all week since it was my topic. Oh, Linda's thinking
No,
hard.
I am thinking hard. I think that like it comes down to the fact that like no part of a company will save any other part of a company. And I think that Hasbro is too big to really, I think it's just too big. And I think Hasbro, like nothing will save Hasbro. It's just too much of like a giant, massive, bloodthirsty capitalist organization worth billions of dollars. Like D&D is not going to save Hasbro. In my opinion, D&D can barely save itself.
I'm going to basically agree and say that, like, in the best case, Wizards saves Wizards. Like, they just lost 30% of Hasbro, mostly which was not from Wizards. And if Hasbro around Wizards is self-destructing, like a rocket that is, it left the atmosphere and like little pieces are falling off, and then eventually all that's left in the ship of Theseus is basically WotC, and it's this smaller thing that maybe can stay afloat. Maybe that happens, but I'm not seeing it where like D&D and Magic just are pulling in lots of money and they're using that to bail out this behemoth Hasbro that remains like unprofitably like lumbering around and riding on the coattails. I just don't see that as a possibility. I see, like, I guess like the Alta Fox vision of WotC leaving or just going on its own is possible. Like falling with the ship also seems like it's possible. It depends on how they do with the D&D VTT and some of the other things they're doing with Magic, but I just don't see a world where they can just blithely continue losing money on other sections and just being like, well, it's fine because we're being held up by Dungeons and Dragons.
So a few things. First of all, do like and subscribe because we're halfway through. I just have to say that. And I only see 100 likes and we have over 500 people watching. Come on, people. Don't you got thumbs? Don't you got fingers? You can press that little button. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to ask us and we'll try to answer them. Super chats are always answered, but I do see some. First of all, one thing I do want to point out, Jimmy here says, I completely disagree with Linda. WotC sales are up 40% over last year. Wrong. And I break this down, actually, if you go back about a month or so after the third quarter earnings, I break it down into very detailed analysis with myself, and I believe it was Professor Dungeon Master. And were you on that one, Mark? I can't remember.
I don't think so,
No,
but I know what
one.
you're talking about.
Yes.
The 40% comes, a lot of it, from the licensing from Baldur's Gate 3, for example, and from certain Magic things.
And Magic, correct. D&D is up, I think, about 3% this year, and Magic. And Magic is up something like 40% this year. So if one is up that much, and they're only up, so if Magic is up 40%, and the entire division is only up 3%, something's pulling it down.
Counterpoint, they announced a new edition, and you always go down in a year where you announce another edition. So like, it's not unexpected, and they probably will go back up when the new edition and the VTT come up. I just don't think it can save the sinking ship of, like, if Hasbro got hit by an iceberg, and right now, like, maybe WotC gets off on a lifeboat, but I just don't think you could just throw WotC into that hole and then cross your fingers and hope that the ship stays afloat.
Yeah, and by the way, that's 40% was Lord of the Rings. It was two things. It was Lord of the Rings, which did great, and it's supposed to be a very good set. And I love Lord of the Rings. I'm sure it did fantastic. However, they have to pay a percentage of that out, so don't think they got to keep all that. And a lot of that was also Baldur's Gate 3, which was a deal that was signed 6 years ago, okay? I don't want them to be cowing and saying, oh yeah, we're geniuses, we came up with this deal. No, they didn't. Nobody in the C-suite, no one who was there now had anything to do with this deal. And if you were so smart, where are the Baldur's Gate 3 figures? Where is the companion pieces for D&D Beyond? Where is all the tie-ins you were doing for the movies? You had no idea that this was going to happen. So don't tell me and crow about it now. Because if you knew that was going to happen, you would have done everything you did with the D&D movie with Baldur's Gate 3. And you didn't, because no one, including Microsoft, by the way, because they did an internal analysis of how well it's going to do, and no one, except me, thought it was going to do well. And I got it on video. I said how well it's going to do. And that's only because I'm a huge fan of Larian Studios and I know how nuts they are. And damn, did they knock that thing out of the park. And by the way, Embracer Group is not going to save them, because Embracer Group is selling and firing everyone as well. And they're doing terrible. Boy, this is a fun holiday season episode.
This is just not a very uplifting. Now,
No,
we have a
it's
question
not.
from Nadine Marcus wondering, do you think making a new edition of D&D was good? It seems to me they should have simply revised 5e to make it more balanced. That way players wouldn't have to start from scratch. Now, to be fair, their new edition mostly is a revised 5e to make it more balanced. You can have a new edition that's more of like a small update that isn't a complete rebuild where it's like, wow, everything's so different. I don't understand any of this new edition. This is one of those small incremental additions. It's not like 3e to 4e or 4e to 5e. It's more of a 3.0 to 3.5.
Was it a good idea? Nope. It was not a good idea. I've covered this many, many, many times on the show. It's been rumored very strongly that the only reason they even said they were making a new edition is because they wanted to buy D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond had basically a perpetual license to make D&D products forever on their platform. They were not going to sell to Hasbro, so the only way they can force their hand is that they said, fine, since you have basically a perpetual license to make 5th edition products on D&D Beyond forever, and you guys are minting and making money, we'll just come out with a new edition. Because they said they were coming out with a new edition. There was none of this, oh, it's just 5th edition crap. If you go back a year and a half, it was like, oh no, it's a new edition. We're coming out with a new edition of D&D. And then that's when I started doing my pronosticating, where I was like, no, it's not going to be a new edition. So yeah, they did this because they wanted to come out with, they wanted to buy D&D Beyond, which worked, by the way, and then they bought D&D Beyond for, was it 142, 145 million dollars, and then they kind of backed themselves in this position where they're like, had to start figuring out crap. We're coming out with a new edition, but new editions, as soon as you announce a new edition, all your old sales tank. That happens every time. We have dozens of years proving this, so they knew this was going to happen. So instead, they're like, we'll just negate the OGL and forget about all that stuff. And that didn't work. So they're in this limbo. And there's exactly one company that did this perfectly. And damn, did they do that perfectly. Paizo did this perfectly, because when they announced Pathfinder 2nd Edition, they also announced Starfinder, which really helped hold them up during that transition period, because I'm sure the Pathfinder First Edition sales tanked, but damn, their Starfinder sales went up a lot. I know, because they were like sold out of their book like right away, and people were playing it. I was playing it, I loved it, and it was actually a nice breath of fresh air. So they needed something else to prop up D&D during this edition change.
It's not the first time that somebody did a science fantasy RPG during an edition change.
Right.
Remember Star Wars Saga Edition?
Right,
Between
yeah.
3.5 and 4e?
Yeah.
For WotC?
Yeah.
Not like the most innovative idea ever, but
Mhm.
I think it worked really well for Paizo. There's another super chat from Lord God who wants us each to predict